Well, he's flown 3 space missions and spent 6 months as commander of the International Space Station. That's among accomplishments that's seen him dubbed the most famous astronaut since Neil Armstrong. Chris Hadfield joins me now in the studio. Thanks for your time. Do you get that introduction a lot? Is that sort of like, come on, I'm my own man? Or, I mean, it's a pretty good introduction. Everyone knows who Neil Armstrong is, and a lot of people know who you are.
I knew Neil Armstrong. It's an enormous compliment. I appreciate you saying it. Thanks.
You're also a best-selling author, which I just found out before our interview began. I'm interested, first of all, what you're doing here. You're talking, amongst other things, at a cyber conference. I'm sort of thinking the link here, it's about what, keeping cool during a crisis.
There have been a lot of cybersecurity incidents going on, and they're only ramping up, especially with COVID, as we've become more of a digitally connected world. And so the folks at the Australian Information Security Association has asked me to come and talk about how did we deal with the incredible pressures and the technological problems that you face, and then on a personal and a professional and a team level, how do you deal with those things? But also, just how do you conduct a normal life when you live a very stressful existence?
I guess when I think of crisis and space, my mind goes to the most famous Apollo issue, of course, which ended incredibly and somehow safely for those involved. Yeah. Talk us through some of your really stressful moments up there.
So I commanded the International Space Station, and while I was commander, we blew one of our main cooling lines and had to do an emergency spacewalk to save the entire space station. And while I was outside on my first spacewalk, I was blinded inside my spacesuit.
How did that happen? How were you blinded?
There was contamination inside the suit, that a caustic sort of surfactant on the visor that got into both my eyes and blinded me and took about a half hour to clear. So things go bad in space. And then that's the reason that we train and have professional astronauts and work our entire lives, so that when something like Apollo 13 or like one of the things that's happened to me and my crew happens, you have the capacity. And that sort of ties back in to cybersecurity and the things I'll be talking about here with those folks.
So often for people, when there's that sort of short-term crisis, there might be breathing into a paper bag or just get some air. I mean, I just can't imagine at that point you're in this claustrophobic situation and you can see, in most circumstances, I guess, the world sitting there, your family and your loved one. I just can't imagine what rushes through. Is there an instant moment where you do sort of panic and go no, and then the training kicks in?
It's sort of the other way around, Tom. It's not that the training kicks in, that's who you are.
Right.
And there are no paper bags on the space station, especially if you're in a spacesuit. Paper bag won't do it for you. You need a lot greater depth than that. And the greatest antidote for fear is competence. And if all you're relying on is your paper bag and crossing your fingers and a rabbit's foot, then you're not going to do a very good job of flying a spaceship. And so I've worked at it my whole life. I'm an engineer and a combat fighter pilot and a test pilot and an astronaut. And so those gave me the confidence and the competence to be able to do those jobs.